Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unedited Me. I'm Sabrina, and today I have my friend here, Heather Jones, and Heather is a singer. She is an amazing musician, singer, songwriter. She has such a beautiful heart, and this past year we have just grown closer together because we both went through a season of healing and restoration and going through therapy. And so we are here to talk to you guys about what we learned in our therapy and some things that we learned along the way. And yeah, Heather, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Unedited Me.
Yay! Thank you so much, Sabrina, for having me. It's such a joy. I love hanging out with you, and it's so exciting to hang out with you with all of your beautiful people on your channel and just talk about life. And thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have our talk because there's something that we talked about a few weeks ago when we were FaceTiming, and when I was thinking about, doing this topic, which we're talking about false reality, um, I was thinking about how do I bring what Heather so emanates so well, and the way that she just is so eloquent in the way you're so eloquent in the way that you speak about things. You have such good wording, and the last time that we talked, I was thinking about how you word things so well and how I really wanted you to just explain what you've lived when it comes to living with false reality and what that is. And I mean, I lived that too, especially I've been realizing a lot of my false realities lately, especially through therapy. I mean, we both know
Yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
So if you just want to explain what that is and how you encountered that this past year.
Yeah, totally. No, that's so good. False reality is such a broad topic. I think when I first heard that when we were talking about it, it was like, oh, what do I want to talk about? And I realized that it's so multi-layered. Like when you realize going through therapy that you've been like living a lie or like having this false reality of like, this is something that I have been living, but it's not the truth. Um, in my life, I've realized that that was because of trauma and because of the way that you self-protect so that you don't have to face truth. So something that I've experienced in my life is realizing when you go through difficulties, and I mean, trauma can feel like such a heavy word, like, oh, trauma. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Like, we all go through like various levels of difficulty in our lives. Like, some people had such challenging childhoods, like me, or some people had such challenging teenage years or adult years or whatever it is. Like, you have these different building blocks that have made you the woman or man that you are today. And I think the biggest part of not living in like a false reality is not ever dissociating yourself from different chapters of your life. I think it's living in integration. And that was something that I realized for me that I was like not doing at all. I was like, well, it was this, and then I lived this version of my life. And then it was easier to be this part of me because it's easier to fit in, or it's easier to like not face the difficulty. But I know something that we talked about a lot through our therapy separately, and then when we came together and talked about it, it was like, oh my gosh, like look at what's happening, is the fact that like every single person on this earth has gone through difficult things in their life. There's nobody that's the exception of my life has been completely easy, because it doesn't matter if you've like thought that your life was like okay, or like, oh, I haven't really had terrible things happen to me. Like, we all have those disappointments, we have those things that don't work out the way that we wanted to, we go through levels of betrayal or different things that have happened in our life. And I think something that we've talked about is, how do I not deny that part of who I am, of like, yeah, this was a terrible chapter in my life, or this was a really difficult thing that I had to face and overcome, and that it's not like now that I'm like living my truth that that doesn't exist anymore. And I think it's living in a way that's more harmonious. Like, an example from my life is like, I was in like a long-term relationship for almost 5 years, and that was like such a huge part of my life. And then when the breakup happened, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to function in these areas. And because of just different things that happen throughout your life, you get into relationships for certain reasons, you get out of relationships for certain reasons. And for me, like, it's easier to talk about like a romantic relationship because that was a most concrete. I went through this from like 17 to like my like early 20s. So it was easy. It's easier to talk about because it's the closest for recall. But I mean, this can happen if you went through a traumatizing childhood, or you were bullied when you were in high school or middle school or whatever it was. We have these things that we like build up to say like, oh yeah, like, well, that was just then. And like, that's never going to happen again. And it's like, yes, of course, like we never want to relive those things, but also to say that that doesn't exist anymore is just not true. It's just not true. Like we have those parts of our stories that make us who we are. So like, for instance, in my life, like what I went through in my romantic relationship, what I went through in high school, what I went through in my childhood has made me a more compassionate person. And it sounds weird, like when you go through difficulties or like having like, oh my gosh, like this is hard to face. It's easy to want to slip into the false reality of like, yeah, well, I was actually like, people lie about their life. Like, oh yeah, I was never done this or never whatever. And it's just like, why are you denying part of who you are? So for me, the thing that I realized that even if you go through difficulties, if you have hard things or heartbreak that happens, whether it's family, romance, or friendship related, it doesn't mean that you have to just pretend that life is fine. It's like, no, this really sucks, but it's a part of who I am, and it's made me who I am today. And that's something that I think when we talked about our lives in therapy, that like it was such a big part of like, this has made you who you are. It's not like you've become this despite, like, no, like it's not like in spite of all this stuff I've persevered. It's like, no, there's been these different building blocks that, at least for me in my life as a Christian, it's something that like I believe that there's hope in every chapter of my story, that there's not an exception of, oh yeah, well, because you made this choice, now like love and belonging is no longer attainable for you because of XYZ. And I think many times the false reality that I've created in my life is this like, yeah, well, it's fine. Like, I'm just going to move forward. And that was something I had to like face in therapy. It was like, actually, you've just like not actually accepted that these hard things have happened. And you need to, because you need to see who it's made you in both the good and the bad ways. Because maybe you've closed yourself off to somebody, whether it's in a friendship or a romantic relationship, and you've said, I don't want you to see this part of me because I'm actually really hurt. So you're living in your own space and you have self-doubt or self-hatred or whatever it is, but you're never taking a step outside of that to say, actually, like, this is who I am fully. This is the unedited me. Like, some of us are kind of messed up, but you know, like, it's not about having our lives be perfect. It's about living in wholeness and living an integrated life that's like, I'm not who I am despite of what I've gone through. I am who I am because of the importance of my story, because of the importance of like the choices that I've made, both good and bad, and not staying in the place of powerlessness. Of that was a big thing that I went through, is like, I'm not a victim to my life. Like when you've gone through abusive situations, when you've gone through things in your life, it tries to ingrain in you that you can't do anything to change and everything has happened to you, rather than saying, you know what, like, I love my story, even if it's not perfect, even if there's things that I wish I could change. Like everything that I've gone through in my life has made me such an understanding and compassionate person, because I know what it's like to be deeply broken. I know what it's like to like be without, or like be taken advantage of, or be betrayed, or these things that we go through that are really hard. But so many people are so wanting to avoid pain in their life. Like, oh, well, I love this C.S. Lewis quote. It's just came to mind. I'm going to paraphrase it, but basically it says like, to love anything in life is to open yourself up to being hurt. Like if you want to keep your heart intact, like just like close it off, like don't even love an animal, like just like tie it up with like these tiny, I think he calls it like little luxuries. But like when you close yourself off, you become so hard-hearted, you become so like disconnected to other people and to the world around you,
Mm,
that like, okay, you might not ever get hurt, but you also won't live. And I think that live fully, you know, like, and that really hit me in my life of like, whoa, like to love is to be vulnerable. To live a like unedited life is something that is risky, because there are people that aren't going to like that you talk about things that have happened, because it's messy and life is messy. But at the end of the day, I think that you live so much more joy filled, because you're not fake. You're not having to keep up something that takes your energy and your willpower. You're like, no, this is
yeah,
just me. So,
exactly. And the way that you explained it is so beautiful. Uh, I love what you said about having this fake kind of esque way of thinking about things and saying,
yeah,
oh, well, lived that stuff, but it's all over now and everything's good and my life's good. And I just am all rosy posy and I'm just going to continue my life. And as if all that stuff never happened, as if your trauma
yeah,
never happened, as if the things that happened to you growing up as a child or as a teenager or even yesterday for that matter,
yeah,
we
yep,
can so put masks on our face and just say nope, everything's okay. And
yep,
the next person that we see that asks us how we're doing, we just say good or fine.
yeah, yep.
And there's something so real about it because I think we all live that. I think everybody kind
Oh
of
yeah,
just lives that at some point in their life. um,
yep,
but it's really it's a place of choosing that we have to
yep,
be in, because it actually takes choosing to decide I am going to be real, no
yeah,
matter how hurt I am, no matter how
yep,
painful this season has been or this past season has been or yesterday has been. I'm going to choose to be real in the midst of
yep,
the storm. And
yeah,
that's something that I learned in the past year, is that I had, talking about false reality, I had so many false identities. I had so many different versions of myself. And for those who know me or who followed me for a long time on social media, they've seen it. And I'm I don't want to say I'm ashamed of it, because
mhm,
I I grew a lot and I've learned a lot and
yep,
I'm in a process of healing now. But I
yep,
look back and I think to myself, that really sucks.
yeah,
It sucks that I was so afraid to be my real true self that I had to put on this fake version of me. I
yeah,
had to be this version that I thought people would like and not what
yep,
I would like. And I hated myself. Oh my gosh, I
yeah,
hated myself so much. I
yep,
and it wasn't outward. Like I spoke of Christianity and I spoke of how God loves me and I spoke about how
yeah,
I'm loved and how I used to hate myself, but I don't hate myself anymore and God has redeemed me. And that was a bunch of bullshit. Like, I am just being honest with you.
yep,
Like, Christianity can be a bunch of bullshit sometimes.
yep,
And like, I don't hate Christianity. I'm a Christian and I believe in
yeah,
Jesus, but
yeah,
there's so much BS that goes around. And like,
yeah,
there's such a fake way of seeing things of, well, God is on your side and he is going to take all of
yeah,
your pain and all of your hurt. And it's true. That's
yeah,
all true and all beautiful. And,
yes,
and when he
yes,
does, it's freeing and it's the most freeing that you'll ever
yeah,
feel. And his peace will come over you that like no other. And his love is the perfect love. It's better than any type of love on earth. But we can get so we can have such a crooked mind of it.
yeah,
um and that's where I was at. I was in this place of, well, God has healed me, or I'm being healed, or I'm being
mhm,
restored, and I was lying to myself. And
yeah,
maybe some of you that are watching or listening, you may be thinking, oh, maybe I'm lying to myself right now.
yeah,
Maybe what I've been putting out in the world hasn't been the true version of me. And I do
yeah,
have these internal thoughts that eat me alive. and that
Yeah.
are killing me and are killing my soul. And that's what I
Yeah.
was living. And I just want to say, number one, like I think we both can say that we understand how you're doing.
Yes.
We both can say that like that's a reality that we've both lived. And if you choose, as I said, this choosing to be real and vulnerable and facing the crap in your life, facing the fears in your life, facing people sometimes in your life, facing
Yeah.
yourself, if you choose
Yeah.
that, then you're on a path towards freedom. I guarantee you.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
The thing that came to mind when you were talking was Brene Brown. I mean, she's just so good. Her content is just amazing and so potent for our generation, especially as millennials, and for all generations, truly.
Mhm.
But she talks about in one of her books the shame storm, or like the shame cyclone. I forget
Yeah.
exactly what the word is, but it basically is like, well, like once you start thinking that like you're a piece of crap, it just keeps going,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like stuck in this cyclone. And I think every single person within the sound of our voice can say, yeah, I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to like feel ashamed for something and then just I shut down because of this, or I get hyper vigilant and then I try to over control things so that I feel better
Yeah.
about what's happening. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen, at least in your life as my friend, and I've seen in my life as well, is that when you call shame for what it is and you actually speak it out,
Mm-hmm.
it loses its power
Mm-hmm.
because you're not like stuck in this internal, like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to like live this. Like, I just am, I can't believe I'm being, it's like almost like when you realize you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm posting this stuff about being real, but I'm not. And then like, how do I, and then you're like, do I just keep up the facade or do I actually be
Yeah.
real about being real? And it's like this kind of like, I guess, cognitive dissonance of like, how do I take ownership without being like, yeah, and I just suck and I don't know what to do with my life and I just messed everything up. And it's like, it's so much easier to self deprecate. And people use that as a defense mechanism of like, yeah, well, I'm
Exactly.
just an idiot. So it just happens, rather than powerfully say, like, this has been my story and this has been my journey. And I think this podcast is a testimony to you, Sabrina, of like your life and the choices that you've made once you came to that realization to be a powerful woman, to be somebody who is real and unedited and like not striving in a bad way, but making strides towards living that integrated life is so admirable and so powerful. And I think that it's inspiring to hear stories of that being possible. So like in your life, having all of the right things to say of like, God loves me and I'm redeemed and like and this is what Christianity does. Like when you were blind and now you see, like you are free. You do have that like, oh my gosh, this is who I am. But I love the way that Jonathan David and Melissa Helsop described it. It's the 18-inch journey. It's the journey from your head to your heart.
Yeah.
That's like, you might know it. You might be able to say this verse about, like, this is what God says about me. And I'm no longer a slave to fear. I'm a child of God. Like, this is who he says I am. Or I'm living in freedom or whatever. And it's like, but in
Mm-hmm.
reality, your internal world is like so crazy, so out of control. And you're wanting, it's not like there's shame in that. Like there's nothing wrong with you declaring truth about your life. The difference is if you're not living it, it becomes so like just words that you say, and people will sense that because we're like wired for like truth and life and love and all of this stuff to like gravitate towards that. Like the human eye, like if it's in a dark room, it will gravitate towards
Yeah.
light. There's something attractive about living wholeheartedly or living authentically
Mm-hmm.
or unedited, that it draws people in because it's something that we all want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I don't know, it's just really cool to hear
Yeah.
you sharing that about your story and knowing our own process of like, this is what it is.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you. It does make me feel just very warm and fuzzy inside that you say that. Uh,
I love
just
you.
love you too, girl. Uh, it's just, I mean, I can't help but be me. I can't help but be me now. And I'm learning. I'm learning what that looks like, because obviously, for whoever knows what I'm talking about, when you have lived another type of identity or a false
Yeah.
identity, or have tried to become something that you're not, you don't, there are times when you don't know which one is you and which one is that other person.
Yep.
And I've lived that, and there are days where I feel less myself. It sounds, I didn't like have, I just want to just clarify, I didn't have like bipolar. I don't have
Yeah.
bipolar. I don't have split personality. It's just that I had these other types of personalities that I would, masks, I would say masks, I had like this
Yeah.
mask that I would put on, and this false reality that I would have, that everything's okay. And I'm learning,
Yeah.
and there are days where it's not as great, and there are days that where I feel fully myself and fully alive, and it's a learning path. And so
Yep.
for those who are on this journey, or who want to be on the journey to face their false realities, to face the things that are, that have been eating at them for so long, how do we do that? Number one, I would say, just allow yourself to be willing. As I said, you have to be
Yeah.
willing. You have to be willing to face your life, willing to look back. Are you
Yep.
willing to look at your past and look at it in all of what it is, and not just
Yep.
pick the good parts or just pick the bad parts, but pick it all and look at it, and see what you don't like, and behold what you don't like, and understand what you don't like, and understand the things that hurt you, and behold the things that hurt you. And and I would say, even like, touch them, feel them. How do they make you feel? Thinking about the bad memories, what brings, what kind of thoughts come to mind, what kind of emotions come to your heart, what do you want to do when you think about those thoughts, those emotions, those memories that you have? Does it make you want to run away? Does it make you want to scream, to yell, to fight someone, to hurt yourself, to go in a hole? Do you have thoughts, suicidal thoughts? um Number two, I think we would both say, get a therapist.
Best decision ever.
Yeah, finding a therapist, I think we both know that is a really good decision. When you
Yeah.
start uncovering those things, it's really important that you have a mentor or somebody who knows what they're doing to help you, lead you through what you're going
Yep.
through, and guide you through that. And I would say, do your research before you find a therapist, because there are therapists that will just let you embrace that and just say, "Oh, well, that's all me. All of it is me, and I'm just going to continue living." And how does that make you feel? Oh, that makes you feel bad. Okay, well, see you next week.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to knock on
Yeah.
therapists, because
Mhm.
their work is really important, but
Yep.
just find a therapist that will help you walk through your pain, and will help you
Yeah.
face your pain, because that's how you get healed, by facing your pain
Yeah.
and healing from your pain. How about you, Heather? What do you have, anything to
No,
share to
that's really
anybody
good.
who's wanting to walk on the journey?
Yeah. I think, I mean, a big thing going along with what you're talking about embracing therapy, finding a therapist, whatever, is that in my life as a Christian, like a lot of the times, like going to therapy is like, well, you just don't have faith that you're gonna like walk in the truth. And it's not, that's just not true. That's just not real life. Like God created our brains, God created the way that we function, psychology, all that, to be able to lead us into truth, to be able to lead us ultimately as Christians to Jesus, to a place that's like, wow, I never knew this, that you thought this about me. And like that was always really integral for me when I was going through that process of, oh my gosh, like I need to face these things, but they're difficult. But then being like, oh, Jesus will help me. And Jesus is like, let's do this together. And I'm like, no, just take all my stuff. I don't want to take any personal responsibility for what's happened in my life. And the truth is that like it's a partnership. Like God has given us like so many tools to be able to like live our life in an integrated way, live our life like you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. And any of us who've worked with the therapist that Sabrina and I have worked with says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. But what do you do when the truth's really bad? And it's like, oh yeah, like, because we have things in our life that are painful to face. Like we come to know the truth of Jesus and who he is to us, and the truth of what like we've lived in our lives. Like, and I think that, at least for me, an important distinction to make is like truth is a person, truth is Jesus, but like there's the truth that like I've lived in my life, the facts of things that I've gone through, and it's embracing like the wholeness of who Christ is, but the wholeness of who I've become because of lies I've believed or because of things that I've gone through. And ultimately I anchor myself in hope in who God says that I am, but I don't live in denial of these things that have happened to me. So I don't know, I would say a big thing is like step one is like, honestly, get a journal. Like if you don't journal and you don't write things down, you should start. Because the thing for me, and I know our friend Marissa does this as well, and Sabrina does this too, is like you have a record of like years of your life. Like I know I've been journaling since I was like in high school, and I have records of like what I've lived through. And it's encouraging to be able to go back and see how you've grown. So a lot of the times when we're coming out of a false reality or wanting to live more integrated or not fake or whatever it is, like sometimes you get lost because you feel like you don't see any progress of like, oh yeah, well I used to think this way, but maybe I don't. And when you have a journal to be able to look at to see, okay, what was 6 months ago? Like that's what sometimes I'll do. Like today is February 27th. I'll go back and be like, okay, February 27th, 2020, like was living a whole different version of my life. Okay, first of all, it was like pre-pandemic, so we were all living a very different version of our life. But oh my gosh, but truly, like it's encouraging to see like your thought process and how you've grown. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is what I was complaining about. Look how much I've grown now. When I'm doing my entry tonight, because I usually journal to like end my days as like a meditative practice of like, and everything that's happened today. Like sometimes it'll just be like facts about my day, and other times I'm like, I'm really sad today and this is what's happening in my heart, or whatever you need. And I think it's paying attention to the fact that like you do need to be able to process things. So whether that's like writing in a journal, trying to find a therapist, connecting with trusted friends, like I would encourage you that are listening, like we all, I mean, so many times we feel so isolated, especially now not being able to like see people in person, or wherever you live in the world being in various degrees of lockdown. Like it has been, we've all been living like through incredibly tumultuous times. So please know that when we're talking about living unedited, when we're talking about like not living in false reality, like it's not to say you need to just get over the fact that you're going through hard stuff. Like that's not it at all. You don't have to like embrace it and then just move on. It's like, no, this is really difficult what the world is going through, but God has really given every single one of us, whether it's a parent or a friend or like a trusted person in your life that you can confide in, and not so that you can just like word vomit everything all over them, but so that you can really like say, hey, this is something that I really need. Like as my friend, like, would you have like 30 minutes? I just need to process about this over, like, let me take you out for coffee, like if you're in that degree of lockdown where you can socially distance people, or can we FaceTime? I like just need to talk about something.
Connecting with people. We're so used to connecting with our phones like this.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we're so used to, you know, putting a little heart on a message, or seeing someone who writes like a really deep post and just being like, oh yeah, that's good. Okay, next post. Let's just scroll. And we get so used to forgetting the essentials of life, forgetting that there are people in front of us, that there's available connection to be had. but we're so used to staring at our phones. For example, I mean, the social dilemma really explains that really well. I don't fully agree with everything in that documentary, but what I do agree with is that these people who are behind these social media platforms, their job is to keep us on those social media platforms. And when we start scrolling slower, they literally know that we're scrolling slower and we're about to get off. And so, boom.
So wild.
Somebody who you follow, their photo comes up and you're like, oh, that's nice. I like what they look like. And obviously, you know, they play it so well. Like, I mean, there's comparison that comes in. There's this, and it just further develops this false reality that we can live in sometimes, and that our realities are getting sucked into these devices and not with people in front of us. I love that you said that. And we need to be connecting more with people in front of us. Go on a social distance walk, go and talk to somebody, get off the phone and connect with people, connect with family members, connect with the people that you love, because the reality is that if you don't have another day, what would you wish to do? What would you wish that you could do if you will never have another day again? And I don't wish to be on my phone a whole day. I really don't. And that's not trying to be grim. I'm not trying to be grim. I'm not trying to have this,
it's
like,
just true.
It is. We, like, if we really think about it, like, what are we using our energy for? And if there's anything that would convince you to take more time for yourself, more time for inner healing, inner reality facing, connecting with yourself, connecting with your past, just remember that if you don't have another day in front of you, what would you wish to do today? Would you like to would you like to reconnect with somebody that you've had anger towards and forgive them and let them go? Or would you like to talk to a family member that you wish that you could talk to? There's so much. So yeah, I just wanted to end on that. I think that we've given so much. We've given so much information, and I think that the amount of information we've given can be overwhelming, because I remember even the first time hearing information like this, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to start journaling. I need to talk to people. I need to face things in my life. So we just want to, I think, to end things off, just to say that you can be and you are powerful. You can make the best decision today for your future. And if you're afraid, we understand how it feels. We understand what it looks like. And just stay on the path. You will succeed. You will see the mountain if you're in the valley, and you will get to the place that you want to get to if you just continue on the path.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think one thing I just want to add while we're closing is, first of all, you're not alone. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening to this, whether you're in your car or have your earbuds in on the bus or wherever you find yourself, you're not alone. This is not something that is only isolated to you. You're the only one that's going through what you're going through. Like, that's just a lie, first of all. And second of all, you're worthy of connection. Like, so many times we put ourselves in a box of, oh, well, I can't do this, or you disqualify yourself. I know that when Sabrina and I started really growing in our friendship, it was like, oh my gosh, like, somebody who's going through something that I can talk about my life with. It was such a gift. But then there's always that part of you that second guesses, like, oh, what if they think that I'm stupid, or I share something and, like, I'm vulnerable and it's risky to be vulnerable, and how do I kind of handle that? And I don't know, I just want to encourage whoever's listening that, like, you are worthy of connection. And I believe that God's going to bring you into connection with people that will champion who you are and walk with you, and not judge you, and just be a listening ear, so that you can also be a listening ear to others. Because as we grow in our compassion, there is a way that, like, other people connect with that as well. So I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just, yeah, so
100%.
good.
I love that.
So good.
Thank you so much for being here and for having this conversation, Heather. Thank you for your vulnerability today and for sharing. Uh, it's just so great to have you. I thank you, everyone who's listening, everyone who's watching. If you guys want to go and follow Heather, where can they go and follow you?
Social media, I have been like on an extended social media hiatus for quite a while, so my content probably isn't like months ago, but you can follow at Heather Lilia. It's HeatherLilia. Lilia is my middle name. Or find me on Facebook. My last name is Jones. I have a bright pink background, and you'll see Sabrina is a mutual friend. And usually I'll post content, some songs, some poetry, whatever kind of comes to mind. I've been in a just really interesting place of like recentering and like having social media not be a part of that because it was like such an integral part of my life for so long. But yes, please follow me on there. And thanks so much, Sabrina, for having me. I mean, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, but just to be invited onto the podcast, I love you so much, and I'm just really excited for this. So love you, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you are interested in seeing more of the Unedited Me, you can follow along on whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're following on YouTube, then subscribe to my channel so that you can get updated on future podcast releases. And subscribe. Have a great day, guys. Bye, everyone.